I'm going to share my screen for the presentation. Hopefully you can all see that. And we'll get going. So I am Rachel Tyrrell-Smith. I am Public Health Project Coordinator at Lancaster City Council and Project Coordinator for the Lancaster District Food Poverty Alliance. So the Alliance brings together a wide range of stakeholders interested in tackling the issue of food insecurity in Lancaster, Morecambe and the surrounding areas. And they have the common aim to ensure that all residents have access to affordable, nourishing food. The Alliance was originally formed to conduct research to find out the prevalence of food insecurity in the local area, bring together agencies and individuals to talk collectively about the problem within the district, provide a forum for sharing resources, best practice and information at the local level and beyond, and develop a collaborative food poverty action plan to ensure a joined up evidence-based approach to tackling food poverty in our district. So I just wanted to share with you a bit of a timeline for the Alliance, which was formed 3 years ago with around 4 partners at the table who sought advice from established alliances about how they went forward with their work. They had some success in obtaining funding to hire an Alliance coordinator with the role to develop that action plan. Started to look at priority areas based on an assessment report, although at this point the voice of lived experience didn't carry through. And we were on track for a summer 2020 launch, getting out and speaking with people when we now call the first lockdown hit. I don't need to tell you how emergency food distribution was impacted. We had demand rise with people self-isolating, those on furlough losing their jobs, finding themselves in need. By this time, we had grown to have over 16 members around the table. And once we had systems in place to kind of deal with getting food out during the pandemic, we started to look at the action plan again. Although, of course, by this time, so much had changed and we needed to really start from scratch. We pulled a draft together just before Christmas last year and launched the final version in an online event in February this year, which many of you may have attended. Just want to share with you some local figures that we've pulled together. We did a local area statistics report. We produced a poverty profile to help us build a picture of what was going on using data sets that were already available to us. So for this, our focus was not solely relating to food poverty, but health inequalities and poverty in more general terms. So food insecurity is a symptom of poverty, and there's strength to be had from demonstrating the bigger picture. You'll see here, for instance, that the main reason for attending a Trussell Trust food bank in 2019-20 was a low income. So food insecurity was already at high levels and demand for emergency food provision was on the rise coming into 2020. And following the onset of COVID-19 pandemic, the demand for emergency food increased dramatically, as you can see on these graphs. Although the demand has since decreased slightly, numbers accessing the services remain much higher than previous projections, and we anticipate the demand will remain high and increase going forward. However, food banks are just the tip of the iceberg, and alongside those in immediate crisis, there are a much larger population struggling long-term with access to a healthy diet. For instance, demand on the district's food clubs have also seen an increase, and a Lancashire-wide survey of food support organisations indicated an average increase of 136% in demand following the pandemic. So a little bit about the action plan for those who have yet to see it. I wanted to share some of the details. So this is the overview of our action plan, and you can see again the overarching consistent aim. We have 8 key priority areas. Details of each are available within the full action plan, which includes the local needs assessment and some case study organisations involved. We also developed a 1-page summary. We felt it's important to have something quick and easy to showing the key points, and both are available online, and we'll pop links into the chat and send those round after the presentations. So to use an example, under tackling child hunger, for instance, we make a commitment towards making sure that no child goes hungry, with support not limited to those that are receiving free school meals. We have much more work to do here, but we've recently been promoting Healthy Start vouchers for low-income families with children under 4 in the area, and also promoting holiday activity and food schemes for children in the school holidays. We've taken a food ladders approach to tackling food insecurity based on work by Dr. Megan Blake at Sheffield University. So this really is a process that mobilises more than just nutrients, calorie and commercial aspects of food, such as its capacity to bring people together and have a shared understanding and collaboration around food issues, creates a safe space and an inclusive space for experimentation and interaction with food, and encourages a positive language use of empowerment around food. And so looking at what this means for our local area, it really means that we're making sure that food banks are available to those in crisis, and we have this kind of catching rung one, but it also provides support on a longer term basis, working towards a better system of support using a progressive structure. So we're creating a network for sharing skills, common values, good practice, and really putting people at the centre of the work that we're doing. So running alongside some of the food support, the Alliance have been successful in applying for funding to work on some wider scope collaborative projects. We have a buying cooperative providing low cost essential food items to food clubs and food banks. ECUP were successful in gaining some sustainable food places, food resilience funding, and this is to add capacity to the local food support network by opening up greater quantity of surplus foods through the local businesses. We've recently received funding to hire a development worker, and more about that in a little while. And we've had some research conducted by Lancaster University students and also pro bono researchers, and we'll also be hearing more about the Cash First project shortly. I just wanted to draw your attention to the Lancaster City Council Community Hub webpage, which is now outlining food support available within the district. So there's a list of food banks and food clubs in the local area, providing opening hours, and it's kept up to date by the Community Hub team. If you would like your service to be included in this list, then please do get in touch. So what's next? More action. We're currently advertising for a development worker, and we acknowledge the commitment of organisations providing emergency food support, and that we need to increase capacity to allow some of the work outlined in the action plan to go forward. Applications for this post are being received until Monday the 15th of November, and we'll pop a link to that in the chat also. We're looking to continue the conversation, and that is really one of the aims of today. We want to provide opportunities for individuals and organisations to collaborate on projects, and importantly, we want to listen to what people with lived experience want and need, and ways of getting those involved with the Alliance. We want to continue the work within the Food Futures Sustainable Food Network, linking where we can to other subgroups around climate change, community food growing, etc., and ensuring that affordable, nutritious food for all is the focus of the work. And we'll regularly review our progress against the action plan, but also what actions we should be taking, adjusting to local needs. So I think you've heard enough from me. So I'd like to invite a few of our core members to speak briefly about what being part of the Alliance means for their organisations.
I'm first, aren't I, Rachel?
Yes, please, Dusty.
And first up, we have Dusty. Yes, sorry about that.
Hi, I'm Dusty Thomas. I'm the other co-chair of the Lancaster District Food Poverty Alliance, and I'm going to be speaking a little bit at the moment about Morecambe Bay Poverty Truth Commission, which I'm a facilitator on, and I was also a community commissioner in the first round, i.e. somebody with lived experience of poverty and of food poverty especially. Obviously, the Morecambe Bay Poverty Truth Commission is concerned with all different forms of poverty, but obviously food poverty is an more important part of that. because food poverty tends to be the place that everybody decides to make cutbacks if they've got other essential bills to pay, if it's they need children's nappies, if they've got gas to put on and electric, then the things that suffer are adults missing meals first of all, and then it becomes a family problem as well. So it's been very important that we've been involved with the Food Poverty Alliance from the very, very early days. Ali used to come, and then I, for my sins, became a part of it. So it's the Morecambe Bay Poverty Truth Commission is all about lived experience voices being heard, and challenging decisions that are made and coming to conclusions and results that will benefit the most people living in poverty. So that's why it's been essential. We've been involved all the way through this process, and have helped steer and guide from the experience of people who struggle with food into the plans that we've made as a Food Poverty Alliance. And obviously we are now starting to begin to recruit for round two. Ali and Phil are doing a great job on that, but we are always looking for new community commissioners. So if any of you do know people who are living in food poverty, struggling with poverty in general, please steer them to Ali and Phil. And then we will continue to help with the Food Poverty Alliance. I mean, one of the important things from the beginning of the pandemic was that through connections that have been made with the Morecambe Bay Poverty Truth Commission was the immediate response of the City Council and the Food Bank, because the connections have been made to immediately supply food for everybody who was struggling to get out. So I don't want to go past my 2 minutes, but yeah, I believe that the Morecambe Bay Poverty Truth Commission is an integral part of this, and making sure that lived experience voices are heard and considered in any sort of response, or any solutions we come to, so that they do benefit the majority of people struggling. Thank you.
Thanks, Dusty. Couldn't agree more. Definitely an integral part. I'd like to invite Joanna to speak on behalf of Morecambe Bay Food Bank.
Morning, hello. My name's Joanna Young. I'm one of the trustees at Morecambe Bay Food Bank, and I'm speaking on behalf of trustees really about our strategic plan. And the reason for doing that is that our strategic plan absolutely, I hope, marries with what the Food Poverty Alliance are trying to do. We had a strategic away day earlier this year, and the pandemic sort of upended everybody. I think we all know that, but especially the food bank, which moved into Saltaire Leisure Centre and then moved into the platform because we were working in partnership with the City Council. And we've kind of been in crisis mode for quite a long time, just trying to make sure that people who need food get it. And we're in that funny bit now, which I think a lot of organisations are, about sort of trying to recover, and sometimes that's more difficult than being in an emergency situation. So our 3 strategic priorities for the following year are going to be just to settle down, for want of a better phrase, to make ourselves future ready. And we've got a new building on Westgate, which is exciting, so we'll finally have enough space. And we need to kind of work out lots of admin things and how we work and all of that. But the next strategic priority is making the best of our immediate relationships. So that's working out who we're working with now, how we're doing it, are we doing it well? And a really important part of that was thinking about our clients. And we want to really spend some time reflecting about what the food bank experience is like for clients. And we want to use research and research partners, including really important groups like the Poverty Truth Commission, to have a think about, you know, what it's like to go to a food bank, and what we could do to make that process either easier or less difficult emotionally for people. we're really keen on the idea of trying to form some kind of advisory board so that people who've used a food bank in the past could comment about what it was like and how they could help us to inform our work going forward. And our last strategic priority is going to be partnership working. We really want to work in partnership with other organisations and individuals within the community. We couldn't have responded to the pandemic without working in partnership with the City Council, and this group has been such a fantastic example of bringing groups together and getting to know one another and working together. So it's just something that the trustees are absolutely think is a key priority, really, is where we can identify ways of working together, we will. And we're hoping that a first example of that may be more partnership working with citizens' advice, so that we're clear on why people are using the food bank and what we can do in a positive way to prevent them from coming back. So that's a bit of a sort of whistle-stop overview, but it's really just to emphasise that without this group and without the thinking and the food poverty, action plan, I think it's really helped to inform trustees at the food bank about their thinking. So it's been a hugely, hugely valuable group to be a part of, and massive thanks go to everybody really for all the work that's been done so far. And I really hope that we'll be able to come back in a few months and really have started to make strides towards better partnership working. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Joanna. David, could you please speak on behalf of Egg Cup? Thank you.
Yes. Hi again, everyone. Yes, so my name's David France. I run Egg Cup, which is a community organisation that covers Lancaster and Morecambe, well, the whole of the Lancaster district. Rachel alluded to it earlier a little bit, that we run like a surplus food warehouse, food hub, where we take in surplus food from all over the place. When I say surplus food, I mean food that's not been used for its primary purpose. It's not been sold, but it's still perfectly good to eat. So we intercept that food and we make sure that it can be used for something valuable. We help to get that out to people through our own membership scheme. We run a community food membership scheme, and also to other groups across the district that are working with food in some way. We have 2 outlets where our members come in each week and choose food that we have available. And we're also running or helping to facilitate a district-wide buying cooperative. So that's a buying cooperative for our own members, where they can save some money on the kind of essentials that they would want to buy each week. And we're also helping to kind of share that out across other groups as well, so that collectively we can all save money on the foods and other things that people want and need. So yeah, for us, it's all about kind of building community around food, and as Rachel was saying earlier, around the kind of food ladders approach, trying to find ways that we can harness the wider benefits of food and not just the nutritional sort of benefit of it. For us, the Alliance is so important because it allows us to kind of take an overview of the situation across the district. We know that we cannot solve food poverty, food insecurity in isolation, because it's not something that you can solve. It's a symptom of a bigger issue that needs to be tackled, and that's an issue that's impossible to tackle individually. So coming together as part of a group to actually address the whole situation, look at all the different elements of it, and actually complement the skills and experience and knowledge that other groups have to address those issues is really important. It allows us to see kind of where Egg Cup fits into that picture, and as Joanna was saying earlier, where we can kind of link in with other organisations to offer different services to our members, and also offer our service to people who might have been involved with other organisations as well. So yeah, I think in summary, it's just about making sure that we can sort of bring our eyes up from the day-to-day work and actually start to make some inroads into tackling the wider issues that result in people not having enough money to buy food, basically. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much, David. And last but certainly by no means least, we have Robin from Stanley's Community Centre. Thank you, Robin.
What an introduction. Thank you very much, Rachel. Yes, I've been at Stanley's Community Centre since 2013. And in that time, food poverty issues have just got bigger and bigger. when I first started, I actually saw a child rocking due to hunger. And currently we're feeding young people 4 nights a week. We only actually have funding to feed children 1 night a week. Being a part of the community means that we're really embedded and we're able to listen to the people and find out what the reasons are. And we help support the need by doing cooking skills, support with budgeting, and obviously access to food. The Alliance has really helped support us in that way, as I think we've got a much stronger purchasing power between all of us. If any of us have got any issues, we're able to fall back and call David and Rachel and other people within the Alliance. So it's a really supportive community, and hopefully together we will be able to tackle the issues. Obviously, as David said before, it's not something that's going to go away. It's not something that we can individually tackle, so we need to do it jointly. Through lockdown, we actually fed gave food out to 150 families per week, and that was completely done on a volunteer basis. I think that got us out more into the community. I think people are a lot more comfortable now talking about the issues around food poverty than they ever have been, which is another good thing. Hopefully we'll bring things to light and find a solution. That's it from me.
Thanks very much, Robin. I'll hand over to Dusty for the questions.
So you caught me slightly on the hop there. Yeah, has anybody got any questions from the presentations you've heard so far? If you don't feel comfortable asking them out loud, please type them into the chat box, which I'll be keeping an eye on all the time. Does anybody want to make a comment or any questions so far? Yes, I'm overwhelmed by the response there. Helen's got a hand up. Helen?
I just think what everybody said has been really inspiring, but I think the most important message that I'm getting is the need for partnership working. We can't do this alone, and it's so good to hear everybody acknowledging the fact that we can't do it alone. None of us are the font of all knowledge, and so just thanks for everybody, really, because that's one of the most important aspects of the success going forward, I feel, and that's what the Food Poverty Alliance has brought together, is those interested parties who want to help the community and who didn't really know what was going on in other areas, in other charities behind closed doors, and the power of this group together can really make a difference.
Thank you, Helen. Sandra, you've got your hand up as well.
Yes, and thank you for remembering I'm Sandra, even though it says Anna, right? No, just a brief comment to say, you know, how impressive I think the whole alliance has been. And through the comments that we've had earlier, the role of the City Council, I think, has been tremendous in helping this group to facilitate it, to provide facility, you know, for it to carry out and get together, and through the arrangement for allowing the platform and Salt Air to be food banks, I think, which is a tribute also to how the council has hung on to its facilities and its staff so it can be versatile in how it helps support the community when there is real problems. There's a tremendous action plan from the group, and work identifying the specific roles and help that the council can offer. So that's something, obviously, I'm starting to sort of talk with people about. I need to get together with Rachel and Richard and say, right, you know, exactly how can we move forward in terms of things like the training of staff who are on the front line, perhaps in customer services, in responding to people coming forward with perhaps mentioning, you know, with problems or just issues, of recognising how to identify what it is that people are actually after and need, and ways of supporting. So the whole communication generally and research of how the council is involved, that's something that we need to carry out. I think will be tremendous, but it really is such a group, tremendous network. Thanks.
Thank you, Sandra. And Bonnie's asking in the chat box, Rachel, and I'll divert this question to you. How do you actually join the alliance?
I've just popped a message back to Bonnie in the chat just to say to please email me at foodpovertyalliance@lancaster.gov.uk, and we'll have conversations about how we can make that happen. Okay, if there are no further questions, oh, there is a further question. Sorry, Yak. Oh.
Right, sorry. Yeah, I kind of put my hand, put my hand down. Sorry about that. No, I'll just echo what's just been said. Great presentations, and it's great to be part of this network, this alliance. Learned so much from people, and yeah, and just good to see sort of voluntary sector and the local council and our communities all working together. But there's a question here somewhere, so I just wanted to say thank you for this morning. But David said something for me that was kind of hit the nail on the head for me, which is about building community around food, which I kind of guess this is what partnership working is all about. But I think one of the things that kind of came out of the pandemic for me was about how communities came together and helped each other as well. And I know it's part of the action plan, but I think communities are really integral to this, and how we empower and skill up the local community and give them the tools for them to kind of really continue supporting each other. So more of a kind of enabling sort of route, and providing education where we can. I think the biggest strength is community. You know, I agree with what Sandra said about the council providing that back office and that kind of function of what Rachel does and her team. But I think for me, it's about really harnessing the community as well and young people. And we're going to be coming into quite a very challenging period, I think, with winter ahead of us and fuel prices going up. And even for me, someone who works, excuse me, who is now looking at the price of food going up again, it's crazy, isn't it? I'm kind of really penny pinching at the moment. So I think there's a lot to sort of take into consideration going forward. So I just think it's about community as well. And I just know that people around this group are excellent in terms of the relationships that we have with communities and how much more we can actually do with communities themselves. Thank you.
Can I just say something quickly? I just think we need to realise the importance of how food can bring people together in a way that nothing else can. And it's really nice just breaking that bread together and sharing experiences. And if you share food, it's also something quite intimate in a way that people do feel more of a community feeling and tend to come out with the issues that they're actually facing. So food starts important conversations for me.
I agree, Robin. Thank you so much. Thanks, Jack, as well. In the interest of time, we do have some discussion groups later on, which we can raise a lot of these points in that as well. I want to invite Sabine Goodwin from the Independent Food Aid Network to talk about the Cash First project and the leaflet that we've developed for Lancaster. So welcome, Sabine.
Thanks.
Would you like me to share your slides, or are you happy to share?
Yeah, that would be brilliant, Rachel. Then there's no chance of it going. Thank you very much. Thank you. It's good to see you all. I'm Sabine Goodwin. I'm the coordinator of what's called the Independent Food Aid Network. And we're a network of independent food aid providers operating across the whole of the UK with over 500 independent food banks in our network. And we've been working together with Rachel and the Alliance and the City Council to co-produce a Worrying About Money leaflet for Lancaster, which has been a brilliant process. And I'm really pleased to be here to sort of officially launch this leaflet, although I'm really aware that a lot of you already know about it and are circulating it into the community. This leaflet really epitomises what we call the cash-first approach to food insecurity. We, as an organisation, have a vision of a society without the need for charitable food aid. That doesn't mean that food doesn't have a place within community, and it's very important, of course, but we're certain that everybody should be able to afford to buy food. This is central to our advocacy in calling for policy changes that would mean everyone is able to access social security payments that match the cost of living and wages that match the cost of living. Next slide, please, Rachel. This is an infographic that we use to explain what we mean by a cash-first approach to food insecurity. So you'll see at the top that if everyone is able to access adequate social security payments and adequate wages and jobs and have jobs that are secure, then there'd be no need for charitable food aid, no need for food banks. But if without addressing those root causes of poverty, mostly upstream, it has to be faced, then people, will continue to need emergency food parcel and emergency food support. Further up this ladder of ours, there's the voucher approach. So many of our members are now distributing shopping vouchers alongside or instead of food parcels, and we advocate for that because although it's not a cash first approach, but it's an improvement in terms of dignity and choice for people. People might also access charitable cash grants that we consider a step up from a voucher, really, because people have the choice over what they can really have the choice about what they can buy and how they use the money. So they might want to use it for fuel rather than food. And then, we see it's absolutely integral that there are crisis grants, cash grants available at local authority level to fill the gap that is often now being filled by the emergency food aid systems that are in place. But at a local level, so most of this change needs to happen at a national level, but at a local level, there is much that can be done to advocate for a cash-first approach. And this is what this leaflet is really about. Next slide, please, Rachel. So the cash-first referral leaflets, or worrying about money leaflets, have been co-developed in local authorities across Scotland at first, and now in England and Wales. And they are a resource to help people facing money worries and financial crisis to access the advice and support they need. And they're also aimed at support workers and volunteers to help them to help people with those worries and facing financial crisis. There are 3 straightforward steps, and I'm going to go through them in the next slide, please, Rachel. Sorry that if a lot of you're already familiar with the leaflet, but some of you may not be, so important to go through these if that's okay. Step 1 of the leaflet identifies the problems that someone might be facing if they're facing financial crisis or money worries. And step 2 lists options that should or could help someone who is facing that kind of money worry or financial crisis. And then if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide, Rachel. Step 3, which I've linked back up to steps 2 so you can see, lists the organisations that will be able to directly support people with those options listed in step 2. And then there's also a section of other support, so other organisations that might be able to help people beyond that direct money advice in terms of step 2. We also included a leaflet, a section in the leaflet for Lancaster in relation to refugees, asylum seekers and migrants with no recourse to public funds, because particularly for people with no recourse to public funds, the support that we're highlighting in this leaflet isn't necessarily accessible, isn't accessible actually. Next slide, please. We are able to produce poster versions of the leaflets, and actually in Lancaster is one of the first poster versions that we've been able to produce. So this is the poster version for your leaflet. We're also able to put together translations, so that's always a possibility if there's an interest for that in your area. And we're working on a digital platform for this leaflet, and that should be available in the next couple of weeks actually. So I'll be able to share with Rachel that link very soon. Next slide, please, Rachel. And so just to give you a sort of update on where we are in terms of these leaflets across the country, we've published leaflets in over 40 local authorities in Scotland, England and Wales, and work is underway in a further 50 local authorities in Northern Ireland, as well as Scotland, England and Wales. And, you know, it's just not just a leaflet. This resource starts conversations around what a cash first approach to food insecurity means and why it's so important. We've also initiated training sessions linked to the leaflet. I know training's been mentioned before. In the various local authorities, there have been training sessions run by the advice providers, sometimes Citizens Advice, in Glasgow, a network of advice providers. Help, you know, we have a resource that we can share with all stakeholders where people can gain confidence if they're working on the front line to use the leaflet and maximise the benefit and reach of this resource. If you want to order a copy and haven't got one yet, hard copies and haven't got them yet, please do so through this link that I'll put in the chat in a moment too. And obviously, I'm very happy to hear from you. Would love to hear from you now if you have any questions, or via email in the future. Thanks so much, Rachel.
Thanks very much, Sabine. I'm just going to share that now. Thank you very much. You can see in the chat we've got people asking for more copies, which is always a good sign. We do have some more copies available via the Community Connect team, who have some boxes left from the first run of the printing. So if you do want some, again, email me. I can get some out to you, and we'll look at doing a second run if and when we need to. Next, I'd like to invite Helen to speak. I'll share your slides now, Helen.
Thanks, Rachel. Hi, I'm Helen from Citizens Advice North Lancashire. I think most people will have heard my dulcet tones in the past. In the summer, our research and campaigns team have worked incredibly hard, and I've got to give Joanna Young a shout out here because she's been taken on really recently as our research and campaigns lead and has made massive changes to what we're doing in the community. And she's been instrumental in doing the research and drafting the report, An Income to Live By, which I think most people have probably had now. It's a very long report. It's a really important report, and I think it sets the theme really for the government thinking around food poverty. I think it was really interesting that on Wednesday, well, Thursday, when the budget was announced, nobody mentioned child poverty, nobody mentioned food poverty, nobody mentioned the people who are on universal credit who can't move off it for any reasonable reason, and that's a massive worry. So can we have the first slide, please? Like Chris Whitty. So, as I said, last week's budget could be viewed as a welcome move towards better financial rights for low-income workers. We had the changes to the in-work taper, which allows people to keep more of their wage before losing universal credit. That's got to be welcomed. We had an increase in the national living wage to £9.50. I would point out that that's the current rate, the 2020-21 rate of the real living wage, and the real living wage will actually be going up in November. But for those on universal credit, things are incredibly hard. We've got a situation where people are being ignored. People are not being given access to food and help that they so seriously need during a time when we're looking at the increasing cost of living, the fuel costs are increasing, petrol costs are increasing, costs of going to work are increasing, bus services are being pulled back in our district. And we've got to say something about that. Can I have the next slide, please, Rachel? I think it's a bit skew-if in comparison to mine, actually. I just want to say, because I think we've missed this. So in Lancaster district, about 13,500 people are on universal credit. 37.2% of those people are working. The latest budget will help this group, as I've said, as the Chancellor has raised the taper from 63 to 55 pence in the pound, so they keep more of their earnings. 27.4% of those people have no work requirements. This means they're either unwell or that they've got care responsibilities, or there's some other good reason why they can't or don't have to look for work. This group are really badly affected by the UC cut, especially those who don't have to actively seek work on the limited capability for work-related activity. I hope people understand what that is. It's basically, if you're awarded it, you receive about £340 extra a month. However, when you go on to UC, you still have to wait for 3 months and provide fit notes before you can even apply for this amount. And then you have to go through an assessment. And while you're waiting, you have to live off the basic rate of UC. And this can cause a lot of hardship, especially for single people who are unwell. And as we can see, the Joseph Rowntree Foundation says in the coming months, they'll be exposed to a steep cost of living rise with little protection. Some crisis funding has been announced in the form of household support funds and support with arrears, but this pales in the face of £5 billion in arrears on essential bills already accrued by a third of low-income households. So when we're looking at cash first, when we're looking at food poverty, we can't ignore the fact that policy changes are actually making things worse for a good proportion of people in our community who can't work. Next slide, please, Rachel. So I've just gone through that slide. Can we nip on to the next one? So we're looking here at how much people need to live off in Lancaster districts to afford the basics. And you'll see at the top, there's the keys to the graph, which are the red one is on UC now. The pink one is on UC September 21. The blue line is the line that Joanna and her team have assessed as being the basic affordability rate to live on UC. And Joseph Rowntree Foundation shows that what the actual figure should be to allow a family to live comfortably without falling into poverty. So the overview shows the following. It's the green bar is really the most important one for us, because we try and base our debt work around these figures, around what's reasonable to live on, to demonstrate to creditors, for example, that it's really hard to make any savings to pay debts when you're on universal credit. And what I think is most telling and least mentioned actually by policymakers is that, yes, we're paying the absolute basic to people and we want them to get into work, and we know that but we do know that some people can't get into work. And the absolute basic level of universal credit or of income means no socialising, no birthday gifts, no emergency fund, no eating out or drinking, and no money for cultural activities. It's the absolute basics to heat, light, food, water, rent, clothes, toiletries, uniform and transport. We've recently had a bit of a row with one of the bailiffs who decided that when we put broadband into a client's financial statement who was on universal credit, they thought that was a luxury. There's a massive lack of understanding out there that actually broadband is essential to claim benefits. So that what we are seeing is creditors falling behind in their understanding of how benefits works, how money works, and how people have to allocate the limited amounts of cash that they can get. Next slide, please, Rachel. So here we've got a case study. Obviously, James is not his real name. So he's 25, he's on universal credit in Lancaster, and he's his £411.51 standard element, which he's supposed to live off, isn't £411.51 for the month. It's actually £361.51 per month, because his rent is £50 more than he's getting in housing allowance. So he's got to make up the difference out of that tiny, tiny income. And then his £361.51 a month gets reduced further because of the £800 advance payment he had whilst he was waiting for his universal credit to kick in. We all know that you've got a long waiting period, and we all know you've still got bills to pay throughout that waiting period. So people are virtually little choice but to accept an advance payment. So his £361.51 basic element reduces again to £318.18 for the month, is he's actually paying the loan back over 2 years. 2 years is something that has only recently been introduced. The period for repaying a loan originally was much shorter, and Citizens Advice and other organisations lobbied to suggest that was a really unfair way of starting somebody off on their universal credit journey. So he's actually now left with £73.43 a week to pay for utility bills, internet, phones, clothes, socialising, food, travel and toiletries, and the debt that he's probably already accrued in other areas of his life. And as the government has reduced universal credit by £20 a week from October, this takes James's payment down to £53.43 a week to live on, making it almost impossible for him to afford the basics he needs to survive on, let alone to actively seek work, to socialise, to have a life, and to take care of his health and well-being. Can I have the next slide, please? So this is just a snapshot of how the housing element affects people's ability to buy food. And what we've done here, what our RNC team did here, is look at the local standard housing allowance rate, and then they've looked at the basic prices of accommodation in Lancaster, and you can see already there's a huge difference, which our clients, our community members, our community who are on universal credit alone have to make up, or they fall into rent arrears and they then start to be threatened with homelessness. And what we find is food is the one thing that people cut back on when they don't have enough money. The table shows the average rent in Lancaster, but if you're single, under 25, and you get a share, so it would leave about £150 a month for the bills and other expenses after rent. If their actual rent costs are more like the average rent in Lancaster, that would be the situation. So it's no wonder that people are using food banks, and we see a lot of single people coming to us for emergency food vouchers because of this situation. And I mean, the issue for me here is that this single room rate, the single room rate in Lancaster, extends to people who are 35. They might have children who they need to be able to look after and see and have access to. They've got a life to lead. And this level of income, this level of demand on their limited income means that that's unlikely to succeed. So the Joseph, sorry, next slide, please, Rachel. So the Joseph Roundtree research shows 1 million people are stuck paying private rents they can't afford. This pulls them into further hardship, often trapping them in homes that are damp or unsafe. And we see that every day, don't we? I think there's no doubt that we've all got experience of that. Can we have the next slide, please, Rachel? And this is a really interesting snapshot of how poverty affects other choices and life chances. So we looked here at the free school meal rate and grade 5 or above in English, Maths, GCSE. Our research shows that poverty has a real impact on life chances. The graph shows a stark example around educational attainment. The red line shows the percentage of pupils attaining a grade 5 or above English, Maths, GCSE, and the blue line shows the free school meal rate in each secondary school in the district. The left-hand side shows the grammar schools, which have a free school meal rate of less than 5%, And the right hand shows the right hand of the graph shows Central, Our Ladies, and the Bay Leadership Academy, which used to be Heysham High, where I went, which have nearly 50% of pupils on free school meals and less than 25% of pupils attaining grade 5 or above in maths and English. Next slide, please, Rachel. So we at Citizens Advice are incredibly worried, and we all are in the Alliance are incredibly worried about people on low incomes as we move into winter 21. The energy price cap has been lifted, so gas and electricity bills will rise. Universal credit's been cut by £20 a week. The cost of living is rising, so food prices are increasing. And we're expecting more clients who simply don't have enough to live on, and they will struggle horribly. And I feel it's our duty as an alliance to be the safety net for those people, because what we've found so far this winter is that the government are not going to step in this time. We've got to keep lobbying, we've got to keep campaigning, but it does look to me and to us as if enough's been said about universal credit and about child poverty, and we're set to ignore that unless organisations like ourselves in the Food Poverty Alliance are shouting from the rooftops, are coming together with our joint work and showing the true impact of how this is going to impact on our most vulnerable people. So finally, if we can have the last slide, please, Rachel. How can Citizens Advice help? So we can support clients in debt. We can carry out benefit checks and help people apply and appeal. We can help clients find charitable support. We can make referrals to the food banks. We're really keen to refer more clients into food clubs if there are spaces. Our Advice Matters team is working intensively with vulnerable clients who need ongoing support. And we've got some specialists in housing and employment as well as debt to help those sort of more tricky cases. I think the thing that worries me mostly at the moment as a Citizens Advice representative is that the government have decided in its wisdom to recommission the debt advice services nationally that Citizens Advice nationally provide. That's going to see a reduction in some cities of what's available in terms of debt advice. I want to reassure you that we're going to continue to do debt advice outside of that contract, because that contract is likely to go to a telephone call centre type model, which we know our local community and many in our local community can't really get along with. So we're still going to be there face to face or on the telephone for everybody. And fortuitously, as the pandemic hit, we implemented our free telephone number to enable anybody to get through to us whenever they need to. So happy to take any questions. Also happy to take emails and come and talk to groups, and really happy to try and get the Alliance together to look at some of the research that we could do as a partnership to really start lobbying our local MPs and our national government to address some of these horrible situations that our community are going to be faced with. And it's that term that I've heard so many times, which I'm starting to get a bit fed up of, is that we're heading into a perfect storm. And that's me done.
Yeah, there's a comment there, Helen, from Amanda Spavin, which is, could you address Lancaster County Council if she could arrange it?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, happy to do that.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for that, Helen. We've got a little bit of time booked in now for any questions on the two presentations you've just seen. So any questions for Helen or any questions for Sabine at this point? Again, feel free to put your camera on and ask them directly, or if you'd rather, you can put them in the chat and we can read them out for you.
There's a question there, Robin, that I'll aim at you, Joanna, which is question to the food bank. Are you going to raise the amount of food parcels that someone can have? As we know, the need will increase because of all the increases, food prices, bills, etc.
Yeah, that's a great question. So at the moment, in fact, the rate has been lifted. So the food bank used to try to limit people to 3 parcels in any one crisis period, which used to be, I think, sort of 3 to 6 months, with the idea that if they needed more, then we would work with Citizens Advice to identify those people. Since the pandemic hit, that number has kind of gone up to 12 as a rule of thumb, because we recognise that things have been really, really difficult. And we're just doing a piece of work now at the moment between the trustees at the food bank and with Citizens Advice, just to kind of start having a conversation around what that number is, what it should be, how we're going to try and better support people who are using the food bank a lot to work out what other solutions we can put in place. So that's work that's ongoing, but it certainly involves trying to think about how we can, maybe try and refer more people into things like food groups and food clubs, which is a bit more sustainable than just relying on emergency food.
Sabine, I notice you've got a question or comment.
I have. I was just going to ask about extending the reach of the leaflets, because I know that a lot of you have been distributing them and sharing them, but are there other places that you think that we can try to get to so that people can access this information before they hit rock bottom? Because the aim of the leaflet is to reduce the, to help people before they get to the point when they need an emergency food parcel. And as it's been made really clear that more and more people are going to be finding themselves in crisis for the first time, and may well not know where to access support. And I just wanted to ask a question just generally around ways that we can reach people. In some areas, we've been distributing the leaflet to schools via GP surgeries, community link workers, health practitioners, through libraries. And I just wanted to check in with you all on this. And I couldn't agree more about heading towards a perfect storm, although I actually wrote that in something I've written recently, because we need to be addressing the perfect storm and not just talking about it happening. Yeah, couldn't agree more. Sorry, but back to the question around extending the reach of the leaflets.
So we've got a few comments in the chat here around schools. Yes, pastoral teams, large factories, in fact. GPs, I know, is one that we've looked at. I know that so far we have distributed leaflets, partly because food clubs are running from these kind of places, but certainly community centres, so places where food work is happening, but there'll also be other things going on where people will see the leaflets as well. So that has happened already, but I think that's a fantastic question, Sabine, and it's something that we need to look to address to make sure that, as you say, people are seeing them at the earliest possible opportunity, and we're getting them as widely seen as possible.
And then there's, we have been also targeting the list of agents that normally refer into a food bank. So maybe, Joanna, that's something you might be able to help with. If there's your complete list of referral agents, if you're sure that they all know about the leaflet and the resource, that may help to reduce the number of food bank referrals coming your way, which is the aim. And then with training, I can be in touch with Rachel in the future about this, but the training resource that Citizens Advice has been using in Cornwall is something that is really adaptable in other areas by Citizens Advice bureaus. So I'll share that if that's helpful.
Yeah, there's a question there from Amanda Spalding again, which is probably aimed at you, Sabine, really, is how can we extend the reach of a similar leaflet to other areas in Lancashire? Well,
please get in touch with me. I'll put my email in the chat and then we can take that conversation forward. I'm already working with a couple of other food banks, of Trussell Trust food banks in the area, and we have quite a lot of members IFAN members in Lancashire as well, so definitely keen to help support that work. Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, if there's no more questions, thank you so much to Sabine. I know that you need to head off a bit early, so really appreciate you coming